checking out my takeover exclusively on Pandora's Afterglow. I'm going to share some stories, some of my favorite songs, plus my new song, Purple Irises with Blake Shelton. Together, but we've never really written together in the room, which is really weird. Like the first time we wrote together was a song called Break My Heart. It was right when we first started, hanging out together. And then at one point I was like, okay, my life is so messed up right now. Like, what am I doing with you? Like, this is insane. Like I'm not doing this. And then he wrote me this song, Break My Heart. And it was just like a verse and a chorus. And he's like, help me finish this song. And so I wrote him back the verse and it became the song. So literally didn't write together. And then we ended up writing a Christmas song together, which is one of my favorite all-time songs I've ever been part of. You Make It Feel Like Christmas. And I had been telling him about how I wanted to do this Christmas record. I knew the vision of what it would sound like. And then he's like sitting on the bus, the genius he is, and he's on tour. He's like, oh, I was just thinking about you. And he just sends me like a voice text of this, like, nah, 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 like the whole thing. And I was so mad about it because it was so good. And I was like, oh, you just sit around writing hits. And so then I ended up finishing this song. That song's truly like a 50-50 of our writing, but we, again, not in the same room. But I think we're starting to flirt around about doing it. Like this weekend, I have a bridge of a song I wrote. I actually texted him right before we got here sending him the song. And I wrote this song like 2 years ago, but I was like, I want to write a bridge to this. And I sent him the song. And so hopefully this weekend we're going to be face to face. We're going to have to face it. But I don't know. Songwriting is just so weird. It's Gwen Stefani. Here's Sweet Escape. That was a very lucky one. I almost didn't have that song because I had just given birth to Kingston, my firstborn, and Jimmy Iovine calls me, head of my label. He's like, you got to go in the studio. You got to go right now. I'm like, dude, I'm not getting up and going in the studio right now. I have this little baby. And he's like, no, you got to go in. So I get there and there's this guy, Akon. And I'm thinking, what do I have in common with this guy? But next thing I know, we're like besties. And we wrote, like, probably in 20 minutes, we wrote Sweet Escape. And right before I'm going to leave the studio, he's like, wait, one more thing. And he just goes, woohoo. And next thing you know, it's like a world hit. And yeah, I'm very grateful. We have had many Zooms now. We haven't been we haven't breathed the same air yet. It's going to be crazy to get into rehearsals. But it is very exciting. I think that Coachella for us has been like a lifelong dream. We've flirted and tried to get it together for years. And this was it, 2024. Who knew? Like, it's happening. And we just talking about set lists. I don't know. It's just trying to figure out like the costumes, the production. It's just really all fun. Is Hollaback Girl. Wow, that was just one of those complete mashups of me and Pharrell together in the space, knowing that something magic was going to happen, but didn't know it was going to be that good. And my favorite part was like jumping on the couch, like full Tom Cruise style, like with the champagne, calling everyone to come hear the song. So, yeah, thank you, God, for that one. I want to go home straight after. We're going to like hop on the plane right when we get off stage. And because he wants to have his like Super Bowl food and like be at home and like, you know what I mean? Like it's a whole ritual, the Super Bowl. And I was like, you're the only person in the world that doesn't want to actually be in a suite, like $1 billion suite, like hanging out with Reba and Post Malone. And like, it's like so funny. But anyways, we ended up not being able to fly out because they have these like no fly zones and all this stuff happens. So we ended up in the suite. I was like, all I want is a gigantic pretzel and with cheese. Like, please, somebody, if I can get that, then my whole day will be complete. And so I got that. And then at one point, the Thunderbird people walk in and they all had their uniforms on. I really understand who they were at first. And then Blake was like, those are the ones that fly over. Like they're so incredible. And then I realized who they were. And it was also very surreal because they like look like kids. They were like, are you sure you know how to fly? Because you're like 5. And And one of them was like this really cute girl. And I was like, this is so amazing. So we got to take pictures with them. And then when we were leaving, we ended up having to walk with just the whole crowd of everybody leaving the Super Bowl. There wasn't like a secret way to go. All the gates were locked. And so we were kind of like, that's fine, except for you never know, it could happen. So it's me and Blake. And Blake just sticks out. So, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I can like disguise, but he's just so big. Everyone sees him. And so they were like, hey, you want us to walk with you? And then they just like flanked around us. Like, and we got to walk through this whole crowd. It was just like, it was just a cool life thing that only happens to nobody, but it got to happen. We got to experience it. It was cool. It was incredible, honestly. I think that to be out there, you know, at what was it, like 1:30 in the afternoon, trying to like slap people around to get them excited for the Super Bowl was a little challenging of an audience, but at the same time, we got there together, and I always loved that little challenge. And then when Blake came out, that just was like, it's so real for us to like be up there together, looking at each other doing this song and dreaming about it for so long, and then be there in front of everyone. It's an incredible feeling. And I felt like it just came off really natural and beautiful in the moment. So outside of everyone seeing it, like for us, it was just like this really spectacular, wow, we did it. This was our dream come true. And you know, really just the new music, honestly, like Purple Iris is just the tip of the iceberg of the record. And so just going to go and finish that up and sharing is always super exciting. I have to say though, I think my favorite process of putting an album out is that demo phase. Like when you're just so in love with the song, and it's, you know, sharing it kind of feels like pushing it off a cliff, and you're just kind of like, ugh. And then I never listen to it again. It seems like I only am playing it live if I get lucky to play it. And you never get to really play the whole album live anymore. But I am just going to be so excited about that. Checking out my takeover exclusively on Pandora's Afterglow. I'm going to share some stories, some of my favorite songs, plus my new song, Purple Irises with Blake Shelton. Let's kick things off with Purple Irises with Blake Shelton. I felt like in the past I was sort of chasing myself, like competing with myself song-wise, like trying to find what is the sound, what am I trying to say, who am I these days? And it's challenging once you've kind of been there, done that. Like, and when I hit this song, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. I landed. Like, this is, I don't even care if anyone likes it. Like, I like it. Like, this is me now. And Blake actually really liked the song and kind of kept hinting, like, don't put it out, like, save it for something. And I'm like, well, do you want to hop on it? Like, really like being worried to be like, you know, asking him, because everybody asked him to be on their songs, and he was like, okay. And he kind of tried it on in the demo, and then here we are. Now we're doing it live on stage. It's just the most incredible thing, because I actually wrote the song to him from me, and then now he's on the song. So it's just really exciting to share it. And new music always makes you feel, it's like therapy for me, you know. It's like you kind of have to capture your emotions, and then it's just like it kind of speaks back to you after you write the song. Had many Zooms now. We haven't been in the same, we haven't breathed the same. Always go back and remember, we started, I was 17 years old, Tony was 16 years old, Adrian didn't even exist. He didn't even play drums. Like, he was like, he learned how to play drums to one of our stupid demos that was like, I don't even, on a cassette. Like, you know what I'm saying? Tom was in a heavy metal band with his sister. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the fact that we're now going to be at Coachella this year it's amazing. And the more I talk about it, and the more kind of excited I get. And the most exciting thing is hearing things like what you just said, how excited everybody seems to be about it. Like, I thought people would be excited, but it's a different level than I thought. You know, really just the new music, honestly. Like, Purple Iris is just the tip of the iceberg of the record. Birth to Apollo, and anyone that's had a child knows exactly what 5 weeks feels like. It's pretty, like, you're basically ready to like be back to you. You're like, when am I gonna be me again? And your body's all messed up, and you're so hard on yourself. You're just ready. And I get a text from Pharrell, and he's like, hey G, like, what's up? Like, you want to hop on stage with me on Coachella and do Hollaback Girl? And I'm like laying there with his baby nursing, going, maybe I could squeeze into that like black satin jumpsuit somehow. Like, I think I could do it. I think I could do it. And I ended up scooping the baby up and going into the sandstorm of Coachella and doing a song with them. And weirdly, I just saw a clip of it. It's the only time I've ever seen a clip. It came up on my feed, and I was like, oh my God, I recognize that was the day. So that's the only time, and I kind of was like in and out, so I didn't really get to get the whole vibes. But I'm always jealous whenever I see everyone with their outfits, and it just looks like so much fun. And on. I mean, I don't know the number of number one hits he's had at radio. I want to say it's somewhere close to 100 number. I mean, who does that? Like and meeting him through Blake, I was just so mesmerized by his gift and his talent, and he's very quirky and like he's just super lovable. He's like one of those guys. He's like such attention to detail. It's fascinating. And so I got to work with him several times with Blake and be in the studio with him with Blake and get to know him, go to dinner with him, all the stuff. And I always wanted to do something with him because back in the day, like you would write songs and then you would work with a producer and they would produce the album and it would become one body of work. It's really different these days. Like it doesn't happen like that as much. But when we were going to do Purple Irises together, we wanted to find like a middle ground between me and Blake sonically that worked for both of us, that didn't land in any kind of genre necessarily, that was just like, how do we make this sound like us in a blender? Like what? And Scott was the one to do that, because the only way to really do that and to kind of land in where I feel like my favorite music is, which is kind of 70s soft rock, like yacht rock kind of is what they call it now. But like, that's the music that defined my childhood, like driving to church in my station wagon with my parents, listening to that music. And you only get that music with like live musicians. So we basically had Scott find the best of the best people in Nashville. We recorded it pretty much live. And the sound that I wanted now, which feels like me now, I wanted to do it that way, which is super hard because you got to get all these human beings that are actually really talented and great all in one place at one time. And we did it. And it was so magic.